Welcome to the Discourse Analyzer AI Toolkit, where articles come alive. You're listening to the audio version of our article. For the full text and an interactive experience, check out the link in the description below. Interact with any selection using our AI assistant to enhance your understanding. Let's explore.
Discursive Psychology and Discourse Analysis. Discursive Psychology, DP, is an approach within discourse analysis that focuses on how psychological phenomena, such as thoughts, emotions, and identities, are constructed and managed through language and social interaction. Unlike traditional psychology, which often treats mental states as internal and private, discursive psychology views these states as socially and discursively constructed. It emphasizes the role of language in shaping our understanding of psychological processes and sees discourse as a primary means through which people perform actions, make sense of their experiences, and navigate social life. 1. Key concepts in discursive psychology. Constructionism. At the heart of discursive psychology is the idea that language is not merely a tool for describing the world, but actively constructs reality. This constructionist view posits that psychological phenomena are not just expressed through language but are actually constituted by discourse. Example: rather than seeing anger as an internal emotion that is merely described in words, discursive psychology examines how people talk about and perform anger in different contexts, such as during arguments or in therapy sessions. The focus is on how anger is constructed and understood in specific situations. Action orientation. Discursive psychology emphasizes the performative nature of language, meaning that discourse is seen as a form of social action. People use language to do things, such as blaming, justifying, apologizing, or persuading, rather than simply conveying information. Example: in a conversation, when someone says, "I didn't mean to offend you," they are not just providing information but actively trying to manage the social interaction, perhaps to repair a relationship or deflect blame. The role of context. Context is crucial in discursive psychology because it shapes how language is used and understood. Context includes the immediate interactional setting, as well as broader social and cultural norms that influence how discourse is constructed and interpreted. Example: the phrase, "I'm fine," can have different meanings depending on the context. In a workplace setting, it might be a polite way to end a conversation, while in a personal relationship, it might signal underlying tension or dissatisfaction. Discursive psychology would explore how the phrase is used in different contexts to achieve different social outcomes. Identity and self-construction. Discursive psychology explores how people construct their identities and sense of self through discourse. It examines how individuals position themselves and others in conversation and how they negotiate their identities in different social interactions. Example: in a job interview, a candidate might construct an identity as a competent and experienced professional by using language that highlights their achievements and expertise. Discursive psychology would analyze how this identity is constructed through specific word choices, narrative strategies, and interactional tactics. Point 2. Examples of discursive psychology in discourse analysis. Example 1. Managing accountability in conversations. In everyday conversations, people often manage accountability and blame through discourse. Consider the following interaction. Person A: why didn't you finish the report on time? Person B: the computer crashed, and I lost all my work. In this example, person B is using discourse to manage accountability. Rather than simply stating a fact, they are constructing an explanation that deflects blame by attributing the failure to an external factor, the computer crash. Discursive psychology would analyze how this explanation functions in the interaction, how it shapes the social dynamics between the participants, and how it constructs person B's identity as responsible or not. Example 2. Constructing emotion in a counseling session. In a therapy or counseling session, clients and therapists construct and negotiate emotional states through discourse. For instance, client: I just feel so overwhelmed. It's like I can't breathe sometimes. Therapist: it sounds like you're experiencing a lot of anxiety. Here, the client is constructing their experience of overwhelm through metaphorical language. It's like I can't breathe. And the therapist, in turn, constructs this experience as anxiety. Discursive psychology would focus on how these emotions are co-constructed through the interaction, how the therapist's framing of the experience shapes the client's understanding, and how this might influence the therapeutic process. Example 3. Identity work in a political debate. In a political debate, participants often engage in identity work, where they construct and defend their political identities while challenging those of their opponents. For example, Debater 1. As a true conservative, I believe in small government and individual responsibility. Debater 2. That's just an excuse to avoid helping those in need. Real compassion means supporting social programs. In this exchange, Debater 1 constructs their identity as a true conservative, aligning themselves with certain values and beliefs. Debater 2 challenges this identity by framing it as a lack of compassion, thereby constructing an alternative identity centered on social responsibility. Discursive psychology would analyze how these identities are constructed, contested, and negotiated through discourse, and how this impacts the broader political discourse. Point 3. Importance of discursive psychology in discourse analysis. Bridging psychology and discourse. Discursive psychology bridges the gap between traditional psychological approaches and discourse analysis by focusing on how psychological phenomena are constructed through language. This allows for a deeper understanding of how thoughts, emotions, and identities are shaped by social interaction and cultural norms. Analyzing social practices. By emphasizing the action-oriented nature of language, discursive psychology provides tools for analyzing how people use discourse to navigate social life, manage relationships, and achieve specific outcomes. This is crucial for understanding how language functions in real-world settings. Contextualizing psychological constructs. Discursive psychology challenges the idea of psychological constructs as fixed or universal by showing how they are context-dependent and socially constructed. This perspective highlights the fluidity and variability of psychological phenomena, as they are shaped by different discursive contexts. Conclusion. Discursive psychology is a powerful approach within discourse analysis that focuses on how language is used to construct and manage psychological phenomena in social interaction. By emphasizing constructionism, action orientation, context, and identity work, discursive psychology offers valuable insights into how people use language to perform actions, create meanings, and negotiate their identities in various social contexts. This approach deepens our understanding of the relationship between language, thought, and social interaction, making it a vital tool for analyzing discourse in a wide range of settings. Frequently asked questions. What is discursive psychology? Discursive psychology, DP, is an approach within discourse analysis that examines how psychological phenomena such as thoughts, emotions, and identities are constructed and managed through language and social interactions. Unlike traditional psychology, which often views mental states as internal and private, DP sees these states as socially constructed through discourse. How does discursive psychology differ from traditional psychology? While traditional psychology often focuses on internal cognitive processes, discursive psychology views these processes as socially and discursively constructed. DP emphasizes the role of language in shaping our understanding of psychological phenomena, considering them as actions performed through discourse rather than pre-existing states to be described. What is the significance of constructionism? In discursive psychology, constructionism in DP is the idea that language does more than describe reality, it constructs it. Psychological phenomena, such as emotions or identities, are seen as being constituted through discourse rather than simply expressed by it. This means that what we think of as internal states are actually shaped by the way we talk about them. What is meant by the action orientation of language in discursive psychology? The action orientation concept in DP suggests that language is used not just to convey information but to perform actions. People use discourse to achieve specific social goals, such as justifying actions, managing relationships, or persuading others. This focus on the performative aspect of language is central to understanding how discourse functions in social interactions. Why is context important in discursive psychology? Context is crucial in DP because it shapes how language is used and understood. The meaning of an utterance can vary significantly depending on the social, cultural, and interactional context in which it occurs. DP examines how these contexts influence the construction and interpretation of discourse, making it essential for understanding the nuances of communication. How does discursive psychology explore identity construction? Discursive psychology examines how people construct their identities through language and social interactions. It looks at how individuals position themselves and others in conversation, how they negotiate their roles and social statuses, and how they manage their identities in various contexts, such as in political debates, job interviews, or everyday conversations. Can you give an example of how discursive psychology might analyze everyday conversation? In a conversation where one person says, "I didn't mean to offend you," DP would analyze how this utterance is used to manage the social interaction. The statement might be seen as an attempt to repair a relationship or deflect blame, rather than just a simple conveyance of information. DP would explore how the speaker uses language to achieve these social goals. How does discursive psychology approach the analysis of emotions? Discursive psychology analyzes how emotions are constructed through discourse. For example, in a therapy session where a client says, "I feel so overwhelmed," DP would examine how this emotion is described and how the therapist's response helps to frame and understand the client's experience. DP focuses on how emotions are negotiated and managed in interaction. What role does discursive psychology play in political discourse analysis? In political discourse, DP analyzes how language is used to construct and defend political identities, manage accountability, and perform persuasive actions. For example, DP might explore how politicians construct their identities as true conservatives or compassionate progressives, and how these identities are contested and negotiated through debate. Why is discursive psychology important for discourse analysis? Discursive psychology is important for discourse analysis because it provides a framework for understanding how language functions as a social tool to construct psychological realities, manage interactions, and negotiate identities. It bridges the gap between psychology and discourse analysis, offering insights into the dynamic relationship between language, thought, and social life. How does discursive psychology challenge traditional views of psychological constructs? DP challenges traditional views by showing that psychological constructs like emotions, intentions, and identities are not fixed or universal. Instead, they are context-dependent and socially constructed through discourse. This perspective emphasizes the fluidity and variability of these constructs across different social and cultural contexts. How can discursive psychology be applied in real-world settings? Discursive psychology can be applied in various real-world settings, including therapy, education, politics, and media. It helps professionals understand how language shapes social interactions, influences identity construction, and manages psychological phenomena in practical contexts. For example, in therapy, DP can be used to analyze how clients and therapists co-construct emotional experiences and therapeutic progress through discourse.